All right, thank you for having us here. It's great to be in New York again. It's actually been a little while for me, but I love this place. It's always fun when I come here. Typically, I would have more visuals like some of the other speakers, but I wasn't able to bring a presentation with me, so I apologize for that. But this is something that, like the rest of the panelists, I can talk about all day long. So I do intend to keep it a little shorter, so we can get to the panel. That's one of my favorite things, is actually panels and Q&A. That's where the best information always comes out. For those of you who might not know me, my name is Joel Stanley, and my company is CW Botanicals. Our story comes out of Colorado, and for those that haven't seen one of the documentaries, basically, I'm one of 6 brothers that started in medical marijuana in Colorado. And about 4 years ago, a very desperate mother of a very sick child found us because she heard we were breeding cannabis with very high CBD levels, very low THC levels, and she had been doing her own homework and research and believed that this might have been a last medical option for her child. Her child, Charlotte, was 5 at the time, and she was having as many as 300 to 400 violent tonic-clonic seizures every week. There was a lot of data out there showing that CBD cannabidiol might be antispasmodic as well as many other things. And little Charlotte had been sent home on hospice with do not resuscitate orders. She was basically just sent home to die. Because they had used every tool within pharmaceuticals, and they had failed her. That was a pivotal moment for my family. I think anyone who knows our story knows that's probably the biggest game changer for my family and for a lot of other people when Paige Figge found us, and she had the courage to try a completely non-conventional, non-traditional medication made from cannabis on her 5-year-old. That was nerve-wracking for me at the time, to think that I was going to make an oil out of cannabis for a 5-year-old. But nevertheless, she had the support of her neurologist and a couple of other doctors, which was required in Colorado. And I said, well, who am I to go against that? And the results were amazing. Charlotte's first 7 days using a high CBD cannabis oil, she went seizure-free. This hadn't happened in her life since she was an infant. Today, almost 4 years later, Charlotte remains 99.9% seizure-free. Out of that success, immediately, hundreds of families that were in similar situations to the Figge family started moving to Colorado to access these high CBD products under the medical marijuana framework. And this was very overwhelming. We had named the product, most of you know, after Charlotte, called it Charlotte's Web. And there was a waiting list that had grown to over 15,000 people for Charlotte's Web. This was very daunting for us in the beginning. If you can imagine, there's very few milligrams of CBD existing in the planet. There were only a handful of us that even knew what CBD was or could even pronounce cannabidiol at the time. And this was a brand new breeding project that we had been working on for several years, but we didn't have anywhere near enough plants to service a 15,000 person waiting list. So we were so thankful. Amendment 64 was brought up earlier. Colorado's Amendment 64 allowed for industrial hemp to be grown in Colorado for the first time. And the Farm Bill 2014, Section 7606, allowed provisions for marketing research and for state departments of agriculture to develop programs, which our state did. I can't tell you what a relief hemp regulations were to my family. Without those regulations, without being able to take the genetics we use for Charlotte's Web products and grow them much more like we grow corn or sorghum, without that ability, I'd still have a waiting list back in Colorado. Even with all the companies that are able to do this as well, there would still be waiting lists out there for CBD products. But hemp regulations made it possible for us to eliminate the waiting list. So that's our backstory. That's been a wild ride. We've been very honored to be a part of Little Charlotte's life, and now almost 6,000 others taking Charlotte's Web, reporting great success. Thank you. You can clap for them, absolutely. They're our heroes, my family's heroes. But what I'd like to talk about is just what else CBD might be able to do. Now, I have to be very careful here, and part of the reason why I'm not flashing branding up or flashing my company so much is because I'm going to talk to you about some things as a person, as an industry expert, and our industry has to be very careful about making claims. So, disclaimer, I'm not making any claims about my product here, but I am going to talk about CBD and what its potential is in the future. So, if we're able to calm electrical brain storms that cause violent seizures and epilepsy with a simple compound like CBD, what else can it potentially do? If you go online and you look through PubMed, peer-reviewed research papers, you'll find nearly 20,000 out on the topic of cannabis, and many of them are about CBD specifically. And most of it's preclinical, because unfortunately we've had a prohibition not just on personal possession, but on research too, here in the U.S., but some of it's actually clinical research, most of it done out of the country, of course. But there's still significant data. Some people like to act like or say, we don't have enough data. And while it's true, we don't have the level of clinical data we'd like to have for CBD and certain disease states, there's still a significant body of evidence showing that CBD is a neuroprotectant, which the U.S. government filed a patent on in 2003 through the National Institute of Health. They filed the patent, and it's called cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. That's what the patent's called. So there was enough data for the National Institute of Health, which is the U.S. government, to file that patent. Following the line of neuroprotectant, a lot of the preclinical evidence suggests that CBD is also neurogenerative. So we were all told, I was told when I was a kid, I went to very, very conservative Christian schools all my life, and I was, of course, told, if you use cannabis, it's going to kill brain cells, and you're going to be an idiot. Okay, so when I go online 9 years ago and look through the evidence and find all of the papers citing that this is potentially neurogenerative, I learned that not only does it not kill brain cells, it actually might do the opposite, help us stimulate the formation of new neural pathways. That's new brain cell growth. That's absolutely phenomenal. Very few compounds on the planet are proposed to actually do that. It's a very difficult thing to prove, so I don't think that we'll see the conclusive evidence on that one for some time, but there's enough evidence that we should be studying that right now. The anti-inflammatory benefits of CBD, those are pretty well proven through the preclinical evidence. That's pretty well known. Then we have anti-tumoral, anti-cancer. We have antimicrobial. And a funny one, so you had mentioned hemp beer. This is a great idea, and you're absolutely right. Hemp can be used like hops, and we have amazing terpenes throughout hemp. But moving into CBD on that topic, Stanley Brothers are currently working with a distillery in Kentucky and a brewery in Colorado to add to our social enterprise, just some new great products from hemp. And my little brother John, he's probably the funniest one of us. He's also the best looking. He was in an interview, and I usually try and keep him out of interviews because he's a little crass too, but he just tells it how he sees it. He's in an interview, and he says, he was asked about our endeavors making hemp distilled spirits, hemp vodka specifically. And he said, well, I think it'd be nice to put something like CBD in it to potentially repair the liver while you're drinking. This is what he actually said. And then he paused for a second, he looked over at me, he said, that's not true, I don't think it actually does that. Then I went and looked, and there's actually a study that shows that CBD may potentially help in binge drinking cases, may potentially protect the liver from certain diseases in binge drinking cases. So don't go take CBD and go binge drink, because we don't know it for sure. We need a lot more research on it. But what's that? Oh, you want to test that one out? All right, come out to Colorado and we'll stuff you full of both CBD and alcohol, all right? The preliminary data is there for so many different potential disease states, but also for general health. So we need to ask the question, what can this do for us? And here's the truth. If CBD had come from dandelion flower, if we could extract this from rose hips, like vitamin C, we would know so much more about this compound, and that's one of the major injustices that prohibition has done to us, humanity. We would know so much more, and I'm positive, based on the data that's out there, that it would be the #1 go-to supplement on the top of your fridge, in your supplement drawer, wherever you keep them. Mine are on the top of my fridge. It would be the #1 supplement out there. Simply for its neuroprotective effects alone, you have to look at it and look at dementia statistics. Look at brain trauma now, chronic traumatic encephalopathy going on with the former NFL players. That's why I take it. That's why I'm going to take it the rest of my life. But what can it do for you far beyond epilepsy, far beyond the stories you've seen? This could be potentially limitless, and what we're going to know about it, now that the barriers to research are being lifted, what we're going to know about it in the next 5 to 10 years is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. Give me 1 second. My computer liked to time out and not give me my screen back. Okay, I'll just keep talking. So now that we understand that this can be taken as a supplement, this leads into another arena. Oh, I remembered where I was at. Good. Which is the argument between drug, supplement and food, or medical marijuana for CBD, okay? This is going to be a big argument for a little while here. It's going to be a fun one, and those that are in the industry are going to have to unite to tackle this issue. And it really comes down to money, because the science is on the side of CBD to be a food, supplement, and really all of them. It applies to pharmaceutical drug development. We can develop amazing pharmaceuticals out of different cannabinoids. But it applies to food, and it applies to medical marijuana as well, because different ratios of high THC and CBD do different things for different people. So it really fits in all three. But the main issue that I'd like for people to understand is that we're dealing with something that all of the data out there, all of the data suggests is non-toxic, non-psychoactive, and completely non-addictive. We've got a vitamin C-like compound here that we have the Drug Enforcement Agency saying is a Schedule I controlled substance, which I assure you in statute and law, it's actually not. It's not mentioned in US statute anywhere. And that leads us to the word hemp in general. which is where companies like mine take their legal protections in growing it and distributing it. Hemp wasn't defined in U.S. law until 2014. We just assumed what hemp was based on exemptions made in the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 and the Controlled Substance Act of 1971. Well, 2014 gave us an official hemp definition. I'm very thankful for that hemp definition, but it's kind of hilarious. If you zoom off the planet for a minute and look at our little games here, it's kind of hilarious that we have a legal definition for hemp, for a non-psychoactive, one of the most beneficial plants. You heard from the other speakers. They have great information on all of the things that this plant can do for us, do for our economy, do for our farmers, do for our manufacturers. But we had to go and legally define it. We didn't have to go and legally define corn. But corn can't do all those amazing things. But both of them are non-psychoactive. But the fear and propaganda has caused that. Now I want to go into the impact that CBD itself has had and stories like Little Charlotte's. After the first Sanjay Gupta piece on CNN titled Weed One, after it came out, that's when our waiting list grew to 15,000 plus people. We immediately started to see products show up online boasting CBD. Now, again, I was one of a few people in the world that was actually targeting CBD, not THC at that time. Things have changed a lot now. This is, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We knew just literally a couple of other people, and we were seeking these people out, trying to find these people, trying to work with these people, and there were just a couple. And the main work was actually coming out of Israel. But somehow, after the story went out to millions of people of Little Charlotte, and people got in their minds that there was going to be this huge demand, somehow, within a couple of weeks, there were 10, then 20, then 100 products on Amazon boasting to have CBD, when a few of us actually knew that very few of those precious milligrams actually existed. So this brings us into regulation and something that the consumers can use and something that the industry needs to follow. The FDA ultimately is the regulatory body for CBD products produced from hemp. And the FDA decided to test many of these products last year. They released those results in February 2014. They tested 19 of those products, and they found that almost half of them had no cannabinoids whatsoever, and that the rest of them had nowhere near the advertised amount of CBD that was on the bottle. Now, if you can imagine, you're one of these families, you've seen this CNN documentary, you've seen this Dateline documentary, and you call up the Stanleys in Colorado, you get on their big waiting list. Already you're going on a roller coaster because you've got maybe a potential option, now you've got this huge waiting list, oh no, you're let back down, oh wait, look on Amazon, there's all these products, then you buy them, you try them, nothing happens, and then the FDA sends this letter out and you find that product you were trying to use on their list, having no CBD in it whatsoever. So consumers need to be aware anytime that there's a green rush in any industry, you're always going to have this. And that's why you have to vet those companies, unfortunately. You have to look into them, you have to look at them, you have to look and see what their mission is. And then ultimately you have to look at their quality. And quality starts in one simple place, and that is put in the product what you advertise in the product. It's absolutely insane that someone would do that. But this has happened with echinacea, this has happened with omega-3s. The dietary supplement industry is known for this, unfortunately. So that's the first step of quality. The next step of quality, or determining quality within these new companies that are emerging, is simply asking questions. Asking some of the hard questions. Some of those questions like, do you have a quality control team? Do you have a quality control director? These are good questions to ask. How much experience does that director have? We hired a guy with 26 years pharmaceutical quality control experience. Before this whole story started with, some brothers growing cannabis, and the first Charlotte's Web, I have to admit, was made in my own kitchen. And at the time when I was servicing, 12, 13 people, there was nothing wrong with that. I could keep quality consistency. It's more like making a batch of macaroni for your kids, right? And it's going to be used right then. But now that this has gone commercial, we're developing products that have to have a shelf life, that are made in such massive amounts that without a quality control team, without standard operating procedures, without batch records, without following the FDA's, yes, the FDA's guidelines for good manufacturing practices, without adopting the more stringent guidelines for testing from the American Herbal Products Association, a company cannot produce a quality, consistent product every time. And there are going to be some really good companies in this space that are going to be doing exactly that. And there are going to be a lot that are just in it for the green rush. They don't care if they get caught later down the road. They don't care if they get found out, because they're going to take a bunch of money from you in the meantime. And you're going to find this throughout the cannabis industry in general, but right now we're talking about hemp. You're going to see this with CBD. All right, I'd like to go back real quick before I go to the panel. I'd like to just talk a little bit more about the pharmaceutical side of this, the dietary supplement side of this. Please understand that my family, my group, is not against the pharmaceutical development of cannabinoids. We should do that. We have amazing advances in science, and we can develop some amazing, very standardized tools as drugs. But one of the problems, one of the misconceptions we have here in the US, and it isn't technically this way, but it's in the medical community's minds, it's in the regulators' minds, that when something works, it's a drug. That just because something works, it automatically has to be a drug and only a drug. Well, this, of course, is totally ridiculous. This is the first time, or at least one of the first times, that a pure botanical extract is surpassing the efficacy of pharmaceutically developed drugs. This phenomenon really hasn't happened. Not this way. And it's obvious, not just anecdotally. Now there's clinical data coming out from GW Pharmaceuticals showing this is the case. This really does work for many different people. However, if we care about being able to access this outside of monopolies, outside of a broken pharmaceutical system, if we care about being able to access this non-psychoactive, non-toxic, non-addictive, very healthy compound, we're going to have to stand up and say no to pharmaceutical only route. But we're going to see that push, we're going to have that fight. I want people to be aware of it. And I think over the next couple of years, you're going to see the dietary supplement industry win this battle, because the science is on our side and actually the law is on our side. But there's going to be a major push for it, and I invite everyone to get involved as you see this happen. Thank you very much for giving me a hearing. I look forward to the panel discussion. Should be a good one. Stick around.